Distinctive brand assets are those intangibles that are created as part of your brand identity or during promotional campaigns. They're really important in being noticed and remembered by buyers. You see, research indicates that most of our daily decisions are made automatically and unconsciously using System 1, which was a concept described by Daniel Kahneman's best-selling book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Apparently, our brains are wired to use two modes of thought. System 1, which is fast, instinctive and emotional, while System 2 is slower, more effortful, logical and deliberate. The two modes complement each other. We need to bear in mind this way that people process information when we approach branding, because people will only use their logical System 2 for decisions that they consciously need to make. This is a limited resource that is easily depleted because people get tired if they use it too much. So we are actually naturally wired to make less use of System 2 thinking when it comes to making certain decisions, such as which brands to consider buying. Although branding professionals place a lot of emphasis on brand meaning and differentiation, the research from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute establishes that people don't actually pay much attention to brand meaning. We're all far too busy living our lives, and we've got better things to think about than what a brand signifies and means, let alone fall in love with a brand. You see, the discoveries about how our brains process new information and notice surroundings is key to creating a distinctive brand. The aim is to have easy to remember brand assets that will, over time, with constant and consistent use, create memory structures that keep the brand top of mind for buyers. You see, the choices about which brand elements to create for your brand can have long-term impact on the fortunes of your business, because these choices determine whether the barriers to entry created by the branding are effective ones or not. You see, erecting barriers to entry, IP is all about erecting barriers to entry, a moat, so to speak, around your business, as Warren Buffett calls it. Thinking about the design assets strategically before you create them means you should consider how IP impacts what you create. It's a good idea to use IP strategically before you choose a name and decide which brand assets to create, so you make choices that will more readily enable you to stand out and be uniquely recognized. That means prioritizing emphasis on assets that can be legally protected, as these can be more readily associated with your brand name over time. You see, having legal protection will ensure that you are difficult to copy, that competitors cannot steal your market share. Much copying that occurs in business isn't actually legally actionable, and many of the distinctive assets you might use are not ownable. To take full advantage of the legal protections that the law offers involves a radical change to the prevailing practice in branding of designing the visual identity as the first step before considering IP and protection of an asset. Jenny Romaniuk's book, Building Distinctive Brand Assets, is a very useful resource when creating brand assets. You see, brand assets are the non-name signifiers that build mental associations to the brand name. They enable you to stand out in your category. These could include a vast array of things: a logo, a face icon, such as a logo of an animal, a shape icon, such as McDonald's M golden arches, the shape of packaging, such as the Coca-Cola bottle, a distinctive font, again, such as the Coca-Cola font, a tagline phrase, such as "Just Do It," a sound, such as the 118118 jingle, or music which is associated with the brand, a colour or group of colours, a celebrity endorser, design of a product or its packaging, a look and feel that is protectable, such as of a website or the internal layout of the Apple Store, photographs, illustrations and imagery, content created on a website or copy used in the ad and in any scripts created for an ad or video. Intellectual property laws apply to all of these in different ways. You see, some of them are protected through legal agreements, for example, celebrity endorsements, while others, such as music, need a focus both on using the right legal agreements, such as to license or commission a piece of music, and also involve applying for available IP registrations, such as copyright. To reach a stage where people just automatically associate a brand element of yours with your brand name takes a lot of time and repeated and consistent use of those brand elements. You see, legal protection is key to giving you the time and space to build awareness of those elements, so you build the associations to your brand while keeping competitors at bay. That's how you ensure the asset becomes uniquely associated with your brand and doesn't become generic through widespread use by others. You see, the way legal rights work is that if you have strong enforceable ones, then sophisticated competitors will know this. They're going to steer clear of deliberate copying of your assets. They wouldn't expose themselves to lawsuits and hefty damages claims, knowing they have absolutely no chance of defending their position. On the other hand, when your legal foundations for a brand element are weak, then competitors are more likely to copy and ignore your rights by using your assets, because they know that if you choose to enforce your limited rights, you might well lose. Knowing that you are unlikely to devote a substantial budget to fight a weak case, therefore encourages competitors to ignore your rights, particularly if they know that they can outspend you. Some of these brand assets require a very substantial marketing and advertising budget over many years to secure, and even then you may not manage to secure rights over them. By understanding the issues that arise to secure legal ownership of a brand asset, you can make better informed decisions about which elements to actually create and build for your brand based on your available budgets and resources. You see, you want 3 or 4 elements to focus on. Now, with some assets, you need to use them consistently and invest a substantial marketing and advertising budget over many years before you stand a chance of owning them as your trademark. Colour is an example of an asset that is extremely difficult to own. The ideal is to focus on building assets where you can actually have some protection in the interim to justify the investment in building recognition in that asset. For example, Coca-Cola was able to secure trademark ownership of its iconic bottle shape only because they were able to use various intellectual property rights strategically to protect the bottle shape against copying while they advertised and promoted it. This initial protection of the design kept competitors at bay so that the bottle shape remained unique to Coca-Cola. The company gradually associated that bottle shape in consumers' mind using clever advertising that consistently associated the bottle shape to the brand. After some 14 years, the shape became synonymous with its brand. That's when the company knew that the shape was a symbol of its brand, which they could confidently apply to register as a trademark. You see, had they just remained with the design protection, there's a limit to how long you can have design protection. It's 25 years. Whereas a trademark can be renewed indefinitely for hundreds of years. Colour marks. Now, household name brands that have achieved colour trademark registrations include Tiffany's turquoise, 3M's yellow, Coca-Cola's red, UPS's brown, and Barbie pink. However, the bar to registration of a colour trademark is high. You need to first become associated with a colour before you can secure registration. In other words, you should be able to prove that the colour has a secondary meaning unique to your brand's goods or services. Secondary meaning is shown by a high volume of advertising involving the colour mark, as well as consumer surveys establishing that a high degree of relevant consumers associate that colour or combination with the brand. Suffice to say that assets such as colour are much more challenging to protect, so may not be worth putting too much emphasis on initially for a brand with lesser resources. It requires a very substantial marketing budget and a dedicated long-term strategy to stand a chance of securing legal protection of a colour asset. If you opt for a particular colour, you have no legal protection to keep competitors away. If a competitor also begins to use that same colour before you've associated the colour to your brand, there is little you can do except perhaps change your colour so you're not mistakable for your competitor and can be recognisably like yourself, especially if the competitor has a far greater marketing budget. You see, from this, it follows that where there is no interim legal protection available to rely on as you build recognition for an asset, then you will need to rely pretty much on your substantial marketing and advertising budget to promote that asset. Obviously, you will use colour in your branding. So the point I'm making is that focus your energies more on becoming recognised in other ways, such as via a visual hammer. Prioritising which assets to create is key here. There are two drivers of brands' asset strength: uniqueness and fame. For example, when you see the symbol of the Nike swoosh, you know it signifies the Nike brand. Nike has been using its swoosh logo since the mid-1970s. It was always accompanied by the brand name until the swoosh became recognized on its own. That's why it's now associated with Nike. The Nike swoosh is also famous because it's recognized and linked to the Nike brand by the majority of people. If an asset is less famous, it's more likely to be mistakenly attributed to a competitor's brand. So interestingly, from my perspective as an IP lawyer, I noticed that Romaniuk's analysis of a range of distinctive assets by reference to whether they're unique and famous actually shows that the ones that are most likely to have both fame and uniqueness are also the assets that you can actually readily protect from day one. You see, the Nike swoosh is a visual hammer which was protectable from the moment it was created. In other words, her study actually incidentally sheds light on the importance of legal protection for acquiring recognition of your distinctive brand assets. Nike would have been able to register its swoosh logo as a trademark as soon as the design was created and could have stopped competitors using the swoosh logo if they were infringing on its trademark rights in doing so. It goes without saying that if you can secure a trademark over an asset immediately, then you should do it, because it will give you stronger rights and the scope to build associations to your brand without fear of competitor copying. Even if your advertising budget is tiny, you can confidently build up recognition to an asset that you own. However, if you can't legally protect that asset, then put your resources into a more worthwhile asset to promote. In my video last week, I explained my own journey trying to get a visual hammer for my business. I believe a visual hammer is essential because it gives extra potential recognition and is protectable from the get-go. In conclusion, the need for brand consistency is usually focused on marketing messages and positioning. However, as Byron Sharp highlights in his books, it's vital to focus just as much attention, if not more, on visual, verbal, and style of branding elements. Your branding is what enables buyers to notice you, recognize you, and remember you. It reduces the need for consumers to think, scour, and search, making their life easier without them even realizing it. Remember, they're often in System 1 mode. Your distinctive brand assets aid recognition of your brand. Protect those assets and focus on using them consistently, and then don't ever change them because you're bored by them, for example. It's a really bad idea to make changes to your branding once you've done it.